Yes, we now continue to look at proceedings in Parliament where the ad hoc committee is looking into allegations of criminal syndicates having infiltrated the criminal justice system. Joining us to further this discussion is Accountability Now's advocate Paul Hoffman. Advocate, good afternoon. Thank you very much as always for joining us on the program. Now, it's turned out to be quite a busy news day. Beyond monitoring what's been happening at the ad hoc committee, we've now been monitoring this very developing story from the SIU where it seems they've been raiding the Sandhurst home of one of the businessmen said to have benefited from the looting at Tembisa. Your views on just the visuals we've seen, because of late, or at least since now, we've seen 3 Lamborghinis come out of that massive Sandhurst home.
Yes, I'm very surprised that the Lamborghinis are still there, because if you paid attention when the SIU made its announcement Monday last week, they telegraphed in advance to the members of the syndicates who have been living high on the hog on the proceeds of their looting of Tembisa Hospital that they were coming. If the looters did not think that they were completely immune to prosecution and to the seizure of their assets, then they ought to have moved them away, but they didn't. So there's clearly a disjunct between what Andy Motibi said he was going to do and the way in which what he was going to do was received by the gentleman whose Lamborghinis are currently being taken out of the Sandhurst mansion in which he lives. Mm-hmm. I think we're lucky that the attachment has been affected, because it means that the public purse will not be prejudiced, notwithstanding the telegraphing.
Because that was going to be my next questions around the optics of all of this. That here you've got society, the people of Tembisa who have been perhaps without medication. Of course, these are just allegations at this point. They will go through the process or be taken through the process of the courts. But nevertheless, to see that the SIU continues to attach assets, what does this say to society about people and being equal before the law?
Yes, well, you must remember that the SIU is not part of the criminal justice administration. It cannot act in prosecutions at all. What it does is recover assets. Seizing, freezing, and forfeiting assets is a civil proceeding against a person who has been involved in some form of wrongdoing. What we have here is the SIU seizing and freezing the assets that are being disgorged from the Sandhurst mansion, and that means that whether or not there are criminal proceedings later, in the civil proceedings which the SIU can bring, those assets can be regarded. Isn't that a beautiful vehicle? Wow.
It most certainly is, eh? It also caught my attention. Yeah.
One for you and one for me. All right.
But let's take you back now to the ad hoc committee. I mean, just looking on social media, it's littered with views on the proceedings. I want to take you back to yesterday at the very least, or day one. I couldn't help but note that many were quite confused by the evidence leading style, if you will, by Advocate Arendse, with some actually going on social media and asking is the general being cross-examined or being led through his statement? What did you make of just that style that we saw, if we had to compare it to when he was being led through his evidence at the Commission of Inquiry?
Yes, I think what you've got to realize is that both processes, the ad hoc committee and the Commission of Inquiry, are not a court of law in which the strict rules of evidence apply. So the fairly relaxed style of Norman Arendse yesterday with General Mkhwanazi is not something that we ought to be critical of, because what he is seeking to do is get the information before the committee. And if he chooses to do it in the style that he has adopted, well, so be it. It's not as though he was not getting to the point of the story. What he has a very important task in getting Parliament to understand that it is Parliament that has created the circumstances, the structures, the laws that are currently in place that have led to the difficulties that drove Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi to stand in front of the media cameras on the 6th of July and complain bitterly about what was being done in relation to the closure of the political killings task team. And those structures need to be addressed, and the appropriate place to address them is indeed in Parliament. So some people may criticize Norman Orense for going too slowly and for being too chatty about it all. But at the end of the day, he is going to have to place before Parliament the information that alerts them to the fact that the decision that was made in 2011, which is a very long time ago, by the Constitutional Court in relation to what we need to deal effectively with corruption in South Africa, which is a single body outside executive control. That has never been done properly. The Hawks are meant to be fulfilling that role, but clearly they are not. You could hear this morning from what General Masemola, the chief of police, was saying, is that
Pardon me for interjecting there, Advocate. Pardon me for interjecting there, Advocate. Please do indulge us. It seems we've just received breaking news here. This is a statement by SABC indicating, or at least clarifying, on news that or reports that we're also following around the possible imminent arrest of General Shadrack Sibiya. SABC has now issued a statement following those reports, stating that, as you know, there are investigations that are ongoing as publicized and mentioned at the ad hoc committee and the Madlanga Commission. As SABC, we're not aware of any person that has been arrested thus far, and that includes Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, and of course signed there by Brigadier Atlenda Mate. A developing story, of course, that we will continue to monitor. We'll try and get in touch with Atlenda just to expand more on this very brief statement that they've issued. But a bit earlier on, indeed, there were reports that had surfaced that there was an imminent arrest of General Shadrack Sibiya as the ad hoc committee continues to look into syndicates that have possibly infiltrated the broader criminal justice system. So most certainly a very busy day, Advocate. Perhaps your reaction to that, because there were those reports a bit earlier on, and we had been closely monitoring that any moment now, possibly there was going to be that arrest. Your take on what we're seeing right now in South Africa?
Well, what I'm not surprised to hear that this has happened. And I suspect that it may have happened at the instance of the investigating directorate against corruption in the National Prosecuting Authority, which, if that is the case, it would explain why the police are denying all knowledge of the arrest of Sibiya. But clearly he has been fingered by Mkhwanazi as being behind the letter that the Minister of Police wrote on the last day of last year, closed down the political killings task team. And if Mkhwanazi is believed, then it is because Shadrack Sibiya is in the pocket of the syndicates who are under investigation.
But if we had to play devil's advocate on just that statement by General Mkhwanazi yesterday, that he was of the view that possibly somebody else wrote that letter, there was a different author, and then what happened was the minister then appended his signature. But if we're going to say, or he's going to continue with that narrative of possibly it having been Shadrack Sibiya surely knew when the political killings task team was formed. He wouldn't have gone on to erroneously state that it was formed in 2019, and this was of course following the Moerane Commission, because it was in 2018, it came before the commission. Surely he would know that as a member of the force.
Yes, I'm sure he would, but whether that's a typo or whether one of those involved in the syndicate got the date wrong, I cannot say, and I think we will only find out in due course. But I don't think that detracts from the theory that Sibiya is on the wrong side of this particular argument.
Mm-hmm. Then let's oscillate between the 2 days, because yesterday quite a lot was stated and we didn't get the opportunity to analyze, and then there's today. Yesterday, we had the issue where Mkhwanazi challenged, or at least was challenged on his position that Diane Collar Barnett disseminated classified information, sharing the addresses of safe houses where officers were operating. But Mkhwanazi didn't budge. He stuck to his guns, saying that, yes, parliamentarians can raise questions, but one needs to know on which platform to raise such questions. What did you make of just his position on that?
Yes, I must say that if it is true that information that could put crime intelligence in jeopardy because of the nature of the information, then it ought not to have been bruited about in public, even if it was already in the public domain through the media. It ought not to have been bruited about by a member of parliament who's taken an oath to treat that type of information as confidential. And so I think that you will find Diane Collar-Barnett taking legal advice at the moment. If she asked me for legal advice, I would tell her that she should get out of that ad hoc committee and stand corrected by General Mkhwanazi because his complaint is well-founded.
And then on the reasons that some people join the force, he spoke yesterday about some possibly having joined the force because of unemployment. What do you make of just that argument? Because it's always been there to some where they would say that perhaps for some, policing might not be a calling, but due to unemployment, you join the force. Nursing might not be a calling anymore. Due to unemployment, you may join there. What do you make of just that? How would we then be able to correct that issue if unemployment is so high, and if ever there's a post anywhere, certainly all of us would apply, whether we actually possess the qualities to be a good police officer or not would be something we discover later, but most certainly I'll hand in my CV.
Yes, I think that the scourge of unemployment in South Africa has a serious impact on a lot of young people. I think more than half of the people under 25 in the country are unemployed. They're neither in employment nor in an educational facility. So if a vacancy arises, or if the police advertise for recruits, then everybody who's unemployed is a potential policeman if they choose to apply to join the police. Now, what you have to do is an assessment of the fitness of new recruits to become successful and upright policemen in due course. And that is something that I think is not done sufficiently. I think that in the lower ranks, you go to police college and you either pass or fail the tests that are there, and that certainly weeds out the completely unsuitable people. But to call service in the police a calling is certainly a noble notion, and if all of our police feel called to serve the public by preventing and combating crime, then we wouldn't have the levels of discord and unhappiness that we see being conveyed in both the commission and in the committee by General Mkhwanazi, who's just very upset about the infiltration of the upper deck of policing in South Africa by people who are not there to advance the common weal, but are there to enrich themselves by all manner of criminal activity, anything from looting at Tembisa Hospital, which we learn about.
All right, Advocate, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. That's Accountability Now's Advocate Paul Hoffman talking to us there about the proceedings that have now adjourned. Of course, they reconvene at 2 p.m. at the ad hoc committee in Parliament.